Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grieving process. Join Dave and his guests now as they share practice tips and tools that you can start using immediately to help get you through this day. Now, here's your caregiver host, Dave Nassani.
From Los Angeles, a big LA welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, coming to you live and CaregiverDave.com. That's what I was trying to say. 24/7, 14 global audio and video platforms. I'm not going to bother naming them because there's just too many of them. And also at CaregiverDave.com, voted number 2 podcast of the top 6 best caregiver podcasts of 2017. We should be proud of that, and we are. We have an exciting interview planned for you today with my lovely co-host, Adrienne Gruberg from the Caregiver Space. Adrienne, say hello.
Hello.
And we have an exciting interview planned for you today with my lovely co-host, Adrienne, and she already said hello, so I won't ask her to say that again. Today, Adrienne and I will be interviewing author Amy Medling. Hopefully I'm saying that name correct. Healing PCOS, which I did not even know what it was. So I gained a great education just by looking at her book and going through it. And this affects roughly 5 to 15% of women worldwide. PCOS is one of the most common hormonal disorders and the most common cause of female infertility. Symptoms include irregular menstrual cycles, which I would know nothing about, hair loss, which I know everything about, weight gain, maybe, depression, acne, insulin resistance, and elevated blood pressure. This sounds like some serious stuff. And I know women are always complaining about their hormones, aren't they? So before we get started, let me just take this moment to thank last week's guest, Cindy Hendricks, author of Me, Harvey, and Al's, How I Kept My Husband Coherent for a Decade Plus with Alzheimer's Disease. And she's a smart lady. I mean, she's doing what a lot of people can't do and keep that disease from progressing. Yeah. So you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, CaregiverDave.com, or any of all those 14 networks that I didn't mention earlier, like iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, etc. All right, enough of that. Amy Medling is a certified health coach who specializes in working with women with Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, or PCOS. She is founder of PCOS Diva, which is an interesting name, and has developed a proven protocol of diet and lifestyle programs that offer women tools to help gain control of their PCOS and regain their fertility. Yay! Femininity. Yay! Health and happiness. Those are all good things. She lives in Nashua, New Hampshire, with her husband and 3 children. Welcome to the show, Amy. I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, thank you, Dave and Adrienne. I'm very happy to be here.
Cool. So why don't you take a minute or two, Amy, and introduce yourself. I like to ask my guests just who is Amy Medling and why was she put on this earth? How's that for a deep question?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm somebody that really cares deeply for women with polycystic ovary syndrome, and I really feel like I was put on this earth to help women with PCOS thrive. Although if you asked me that when I was 25 or 30, I would have thought you were crazy. But because I was in the midst of really suffering with my symptoms of PCOS, and I didn't even know that I had PCOS. So, but I truly believe that as a health coach now and the founder of PCOS Diva, that I am here to help women with PCOS learn to move beyond the pain and struggles of PCOS to live the life they were meant to live without this syndrome holding them back anymore.
You mean you had all this stuff? Because you look pretty happy and well-adjusted and content.
It does.
Yeah, I had my own healing journey, and I think sometimes that makes those of us that sort of are the teachers, the best
Absolutely.
teachers, because we've been through the pain and the struggle and come out the other side.
That's true in so many things. I would never trust a financial counselor if he didn't go bankrupt at least 1 or 2 times, Never trust a marriage counselor if they didn't go through a divorce, et cetera, et cetera. Buy shoes from somebody who needs shoes, a shoemaker. So let us talk about what is PCOS and how does it affect the quality of women's lives? I mean, how did you find out all this stuff? I mean, you were sick, you were feeling all this stuff, and where did you go first for the first resource? Now, I know I asked you about 17 questions there, but just pick one.
Oh gosh, well, since we're talking about caregivers, my mother was my caregiver when I was a teenager, and when I was really struggling with some of these symptoms. I was dealing with the hair loss and hair growth, especially like on my chin and facial hair. As early as age 15, I was having issues with hypoglycemia to the point where my blood sugar would get so low that I would pass out.
Wow.
I was having problems with a lot of acne and depression, and my mom, God bless her, she took me to lots of different doctors to try to get to the bottom of it. But at that time, doctors weren't really well versed at diagnosing and treating PCOS. So it wasn't until I was suffering from infertility, which is a way a lot of women get diagnosed with PCOS, because it is the leading cause of female infertility. So finally, when I was age 31, I was diagnosed by a reproductive endocrinologist with PCOS using the Rotterdam criteria. And that's really how you should be diagnosed with PCOS. So
how does that work, Rotterdam?
Yeah, so the Rotterdam...
Rotterdam. I thought you said Rotterdam.
That's what I thought.
Okay, I don't think you have to answer that.
And it's called the Rotterdam criteria because back in 2003, the Rotterdam European Society of Reproductive Medicine had a PCOS workshop, and all of these experts came together and basically said if a woman shows 2 out of the following 3 characteristics, then she would be diagnosed with PCOS. So the first is anovulatory cycles or irregular cycles, which is very common in women with PCOS. And then number 2 would be elevated androgens or male hormones like testosterone and DHEA-S. And then the third criteria is polycystic ovaries as shown by a ultrasound examination. So I had all 3 of those. I had the polycystic ovaries, I had the elevated androgens, and I had the irregular cycles.
If somebody told me I had that, I would just faint because I don't know what any of those words mean.
Just a question: you had elevated male hormone levels. What about the female hormone levels?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so everyone has testosterone and estrogen and progesterone, but women with PCOS tends to be very dysregulated. So it's very typical for women to have higher levels of androgens like testosterone, but certainly not to the point of male testosterone, but elevated enough that drives some of the PCOS symptoms like the hair growth that I mentioned, the androgenic alopecia, so it's kind of like this diffuse thinning on the crown of your head, and then acne and the hormone dysregulation, as well as mood disorders. High testosterone can cause like anger and irritability in women. But we also tend to be estrogen dominant because we don't have enough progesterone to kind of balance out the estrogen. So we tend to have low progesterone as well. So it's really just this hormone dysregulation.
Wow, so you've devoted your whole life to this. That's cool. Once women adopt your plan in healing PCOS, and you're claiming that you can heal it, huh?
Well,
what changes are they likely to see?
So there really is no cure for PCOS, but I called my book Healing PCOS because I think that there is a healing continuum. You can be in the process of healing, although you may never be completely healed. So when you start changing the way that you eat, the way you move your body, start taking some supplements to help with nutrient deficiencies that a lot of women with PCOS have, start managing your stress and bringing your cortisol levels down, learning how to adopt better sleep habits, and then detoxifying your home, your environment, and your body, then all of those things really help to bring what I think of as the 3 root causes of PCOS into balance. And those would be the hormone balance and dysregulation. Inflammation is at the root of PCOS, and then insulin resistance.
What was the last?
Insulin resistance.
Oh, insulin resistance.
Yes.
Oh, so many of these symptoms are what a lot of caregivers are feeling, and we just attribute it to burnout, because they're going through so much stuff, and maybe even burnout can throw your hormones out of balance. I mean, a lot of things can, right?
I would think so.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I'm so pleased and grateful that you're bringing awareness to PCOS because, as you mentioned, that the numbers are really high. As many as now they're saying 1 in 5 women have signs and symptoms of PCOS. So chances are, that women that are listening may know somebody, your daughter, your granddaughter, you yourself may have some symptoms of PCOS. And it's really important to get a diagnosis and get your symptoms under control because women with PCOS are at elevated risk for type 2 diabetes. In fact, 50% of women with PCOS develop type 2 diabetes by the time they're 40. You're also at elevated risk for cardiovascular disease and endometrial cancer. So those are all risk factors that can be greatly reduced with lifestyle change.
So when I introduced you, I said there are 5 to 15% of women. Now you're saying it's going up to 20%.
Up to 20.
Yeah, since I wrote the book, and my manuscript was due last January, and since I wrote the book, those numbers are going up. So there is really an epidemic.
And why is that? What is it? The environment? Is it the stress? What is it?
Well, I do think that doctors are becoming more aware and are getting better at diagnosing.
Such as being diagnosed more, because before they didn't know what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perhaps. And also, I do think that environmental factors certainly play a role. Things like BPA. It's an endocrine disruptor, and women with PCOS have elevated levels of BPA in their blood, whether that's from plastic water bottles or can liners or cash register receipts, and just the standard American diet. If you think women are eating a lot of processed foods that are have high glycemic loads and indexes, and it really causes this blood sugar dysregulation, and perhaps it can help those genetics kind of express themselves.
Wow. You mentioned inflammation, which seems to be one of the buzzwords right now in almost everything that's going on health-wise. Do you treat this with diet, or what's the best way to treat inflammation in this case? And does it apply to other conditions as well?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, inflammation is at the root cause of so many different chronic conditions, as you mentioned, especially autoimmune factor conditions. And I really believe an anti-inflammatory diet is just so critical.
Yes.
And viewing your produce section as your pharmacy in a way, I just think is so critical. And in my book, I talk about this approach is you're using food as medicine and making sure you're getting lots of plant-based foods into your diet. And I don't advocate a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle for PCOS.
Really?
I do think that women need some clean animal protein, to feel grounded and to kind of bring those cycles back too. But
don't take away their meat.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even have to be red meat, but I do think eggs or fish. Clean fish and poultry, clean organic chicken. It's just important to have some animal protein, in my opinion.
So glad to hear you say that. I'm so tired of the people who are saying, "I'll go vegan," and they've got a million different reasons why they do, and I don't know.
I mean, there are different animal, dairy products like goat cheese versus sheep cheese versus cow's cheese. I mean, these things will all balance out differently in the end. Yeah. So you really need to start looking at...
and cows, the A1 casein in most dairy cows, I find is very inflammatory for most women with PCOS. So, if you really love cheese, shifting to, a goat's milk cheese, or like you said, a sheep's milk cheese that doesn't have that A1 casein protein, can be a good choice. But really looking to eliminate those foods in your diet that are inflammatory, and for most, I think gluten can be really inflammatory, and dairy, and then figuring out what your own sort of food sensitivities are. I know I a couple years ago found out that I was highly sensitive to eggs, and I would have like a gluten-free muffin, made with coconut flour and almond flour and low sugar, and I thought that, why the heck is this still making me so tired?
Flour.
But it had, eggs in it, and that was really causing some inflammation for me. So the thing about PCOS is, because it's a syndrome, there really is no, it doesn't present itself the same way in every woman. Every woman has a unique array of symptoms. So I don't think there's any one-size-fits-all approach to diet. But in my book, I give women some guidelines and to figure out where to get started, and to learn to listen to the cues and signals your body sends you after eating, so that you can kind of develop the diet that is most healing for you.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, I don't think I did, right? About the age, the minimum age that people would begin noticing this, and then the maximum age. Is there a time in menopause where you don't have to worry about this anymore?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most women that I talk to, like me, see the early signs and symptoms in their teens. But the issue with that is that a lot of doctors will use the birth control pill as a treatment for PCOS. It helps with that hormonal dysregulation, and
it puts you at risk of blood clots too.
Oh my gosh! And thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, for women with PCOS, you're actually at 2 times the risk of blood clots than the average population.
Which can cause a stroke.
Yes, I'm not a fan of the pill. And for a lot of reasons, it can increase insulin resistance, which is at the root cause of PCOS. It can deplete essential vitamins and can cause mood disorders. I don't advocate the pill as treatment, but a lot of women are put on the pill. So these girls, they're pretty symptom free while they're on the pill for the most part. But then when they want to get pregnant in their 20s and early 30s, they come off the pill, and their PCOS symptoms come back with a vengeance. And so oftentimes women are diagnosed in their 20s and 30s, but it's a condition that follows you throughout your lifetime. And a hysterectomy, you think, well, it has If you take your ovaries out, it's polycystic ovary syndrome, then the syndrome will go away. And that isn't the case. It's PCOS is much more complex than that. And also, it will kind of follow you through menopause to postmenopause. And so it's so important that you learn early how to manage your inflammation and insulin and that hormonal imbalance, so that you can go through your life at lower risk for those cardiovascular events and type 2 diabetes and just have a higher quality of life.
Now, there's no way of screening for this at all? I mean,
Well,
an easy
it's fairly easy to do some blood work and based on a woman's history of her cycles, and then having a vaginal ultrasound to detect if you have the polycystic ovaries. Although there are women that will have PCOS, polycystic ovaries, that don't have PCOS, about 30%. And women with PCOS who don't have polycystic ovaries. So it can be kind of confusing, but recently there's been some guidelines that have been put out to encourage doctors, if a woman is showing signs of hirsutism or hair growth, kind of where you don't want it, that's one of the key indicators that she may have PCOS, and to screen every woman with excess hair growth.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, I would imagine that these women are very excited to hear what you have to say, because for years they're probably just figuring, I don't know what's wrong with me, and it's kind of comforting to find out that, hey, there is an answer. Other people are experiencing this. There may be a solution, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of a lonely diagnosis. And I think a lot of the symptoms are kind of embarrassing. Women don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah, especially the hair.
We have to start talking.
Gosh,
I think women have to start talking about these things more and more, because I think the more they do talk about it, the more in common they see they have, and then they can stop and compare and narrow things down a little bit.
Women are just expected to hide this stuff. They'll pluck the hairs out of those spots or do electrolysis or whatever, and they're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms, aren't they?
Being a woman of a certain age now, there are all new things that I'm learning about.
Really?
And I'm learning there is one new brochure that says it's okay to talk about it.
Listen, before we talk about it anymore, I want to take a break, and we'll be right back, so don't go away.
Welcome, caregivers. Thank you so much for finding your way to our community of loving and supportive caregivers. We as caregivers understand and know the day-to-day feelings of guilt, fear, and loneliness. But guess what? There is hope. I, Dave the Caregiver's Caregiver, along with my team of experts and caring caregivers, have made this site just for you. We are a community of caregivers that understands and supports you wherever you are in your journey. We are a place to connect with other caregivers, but more importantly, a place to get practical, actionable help. There are lots of ways for you to get support. First of all, you can download our welcome pack. This will get you started on your Thrive journey. Next, you can ask and get answers to your questions by posting them here in our private Facebook groups. You can also get live online support by attending one of our live weekly Connect webinars. You can get practical, actionable advice by listening to our weekly podcast. You can hear and read other stories about other caregivers' experiences. Plus, add your own in our weekly Share Your Story forum, posted every Tuesday in the Facebook group. You can access essential resources and download practical Thrive Solutions packs, all of which are geared to help you thrive as a caregiver. We know funds are tight, so we offer all of our individual Thrive Solutions packs. Or for even a better deal, you can get lifetime access to all of our resources. Again, we are here to support you and help you thrive and to enjoy your life as a caregiver. And remember, this is a place to get hope not just cope.
And we're back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, good. With Adrienne Gruberg and Amy Medling. And I wanted to ask you, Amy, about the infertility issue, because my own daughter was going through this. She was spending a lot of money, injections, and are fertility doctors aware of this? I hope.
Yeah, actually, reproductive endocrinologists are the fertility doctors, and they really are the most well-versed in PCOS.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a reproductive endocrinologist that diagnosed me officially.
Really?
And they're really a great resource for women, especially if they think that they may have PCOS.
Well, that's good. Can your program help women lose unwanted weight? Even if it's not related to PCOS?
Yeah, I do. Weight is a struggle for a lot of women with PCOS. It's as a result of the hormonal imbalances and the insulin resistance and the inflammation. And I really believe that weight loss is a byproduct of bringing your body and your life back in balance. So, I don't promise that women are going to lose weight on the program, but I can promise that you are going to absolutely feel better. The brain fog will lift. Mm-hmm. You'll have more energy. Your moods will brighten and lift. And you'll have more energy to start engaging in life and exercising and cooking healthy dinners, and all of those things will then, bring about, lifting, creating more lightness in your body and hopefully losing weight.
You're making some pretty big promises there, Amy. You sure?
I wanted to ask how much stress eating there is involved in this as well.
Emotional overeating?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that we talk about in my book and in the programs. I think it's so important that we learn how to feel our feelings and not stuff them down with food, and to become more mindful of our eating. And the other thing that I think is really important was part of my journey was shifting from what I call the diet deprivation and denial mindset. So thinking that, oh gosh, I'm never going to be able to have pizza and ice cream again. Mm-hmm. And I would much rather have people approach this sort of lifestyle, diet, and eating plan from a place of, I call it the 4 N's, trying new and nourishing foods, and just being nurturing and nice to yourself, and approaching eating and feeding yourself from a place of self-compassion and love. If you think about the way that you care for a child. I mean, as a caregiver, you care for a child. Are you going to feed your child like junk that is going to make them unhealthy? Of course, especially if they're ill.
Hopefully
of course
not.
You're gonna feed them, the most nutrient-rich food that you can to help their body heal. And you need to start treating yourself that way too.
That's cool. I was just checking to make sure Facebook Live was going, and it is.
It is. I see it.
So you recommend moving every day instead of exercise to help manage symptoms. I like that plan. What's the crucial difference here?
So as I mentioned, that I used to approach my diet from that place of diet deprivation and denial. And I really think I approached exercise with that mindset too. I would often hit the gym to go to the treadmill to try to cancel out the calories that I ate earlier in the day. And if I had a donut for breakfast, well, I'm going to run an hour more on the treadmill. And that is just a soul-sucking way to approach exercise.
Soul-sucking.
And there's just nothing joyful in that approach, and it becomes a form of self-punishment, and just like you're in a way sort of punishing yourself with the toxic food you're putting in your body, you're punishing yourself with that type of toxic exercise. So I think it's so much more helpful to view exercise around movement. And what I mean by that is, think about when you were a kid. I mean, you didn't go out and play tag and ride your bike and dance and swim, thinking, oh, I'm going to go out and exercise to burn off these calories. You did it because you love to do it.
Right.
And so that's what I really want the people that read my book and follow my programs to reconnect with, that sense of joyful movement, whether you're outside in the sun gardening, or you go for a walk through the woods, which is healing on so many different levels. And just the more that you move and the more that you feel better, it really becomes a sustainable way of self-care. And I know that I love bar workouts now, and I really look forward to going to my studio down the street and socializing with the ladies in my class, and really spending an hour for myself where I don't have to think about anything. I have 3 kids, so I'm always telling everybody what to do, and this is a class where somebody tells me what to do. And it's something that feeds me on a lot of different levels, and that's what I want people to look for when they're exercising.
Did you call that bar workouts?
Yeah, Pure Bar.
B-A-R-R-E.
Oh, I thought we could go to the bar and,
No.
and work out our biceps. Listen, I don't want to skip over your own experience. You had a natural pregnancy. Similar to my daughter, she tried to adopt, and at first she tried to get pregnant, and then when that didn't work, she tried to adopt, and she had to go through 2 heartbreaking experiences. And then after she adopted, guess what happened? She got pregnant.
Of course.
And then she got pregnant again.
Yeah.
How do you explain things like that? And talk about your own experience.
Sure. So I do think that stress really wreaks havoc.
Oh, she was stressed out too.
Yeah, it elevates our cortisol, which then causes hormonal dysregulation. Elevated cortisol causes low progesterone. It increases insulin resistance. It also slows down our thyroid. And I think all of those things come into play in terms of fertility. I think I really often recommend for women to just sort of take a break and really just focus on taking extreme self-care of you and surrender the process. And it's amazing how women sort of magically become pregnant when they let go of
What are they injecting into their stomach, by the way? That can't be good, whatever it is. I mean, it must have side effects.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of those fertility drugs do have mood-related side effects. I know it certainly did for me. But I often hear from women that feel hopeless, helpless. They're frustrated and have lost all hope because the only advice their doctors give them is to take the birth control pill or the diabetic drug metformin, which is used off-label for PCOS. Go on a low-carb diet and get yourself to the gym. And that was the advice that my doctor basically gave me. And I really think it takes an integrative approach to managing PCOS, and this lifestyle component really needs to be first-line therapy. And it took me many years to sort of figure out this protocol after I had to come off of the pill and metformin because my body just couldn't take it anymore. It made me feel worse than being on it than without it. And I just had these 2 little children at the time. Now my boys are 18 and 15, but they were like 4 and 1. And I was 32 years old on the couch, sick and tired of feeling sick and tired and feeling way too young to feel so old. But I embarked on this journey. I stopped becoming a victim, waiting for somebody or someone to solve the problem for me and waiting for a magic pill. I had to realize that I was the magic pill and it was up to me to take charge of my health. And that's what I did. And I was, I think as a mom and a wife, a young mother and a young wife, I was a caregiver and I put myself last on the list. I thought that that was the noble thing to do, when I realized that I needed to really put myself first on the list so that I could care for myself, so that I could start feeling better, so I could really be more available to my family, and be the best mom and wife that I could be. So you were asking Dave about, you kind of commented about the name PCOS Diva, the name of my site, and that actually came from my husband. One day when we were out to dinner with the family and I had really shifted the way that I was eating gluten-free. I was really mindful of the types of fat I was bringing in. I didn't want the omega-3 yucky, omega-6 vegetable oils. And, I was very particular about what I put in my body. And I was advocating for myself at a Longhorn Steakhouse, and I wanted a sweet potato, but I didn't want that loaded with cinnamon sugar and marshmallow and caramel or whatever they put on their loaded sweet potato. And I wanted to make sure the broccoli was in butter and not some type of soy oil or whatever. And I was very polite to the waitress, but when the waitress left the table, my husband looked at me and he was bewildered and he said, "Gosh, when have you become such a diva?" And, he was kind of joking, but not really. And I thought about it, and it was an aha moment for me. And I realized that, I needed to be a diva in a nice way and make sure that I was getting what I needed. And that's what I really encourage, caregivers as well. You need to put yourself first on the list so you can take care of yourself, so you can take care of those. That's
the number one rule of caregivers.
Yeah, it's so important.
Because if you're caring for yourself, you're really a caregiver, aren't you?
And don't be shy about asking for what you want and what you need.
Yes. Yeah, it's not selfish, and it's really critical. So I ended up, after doctors told me that they would have to jump through hoops to get me pregnant, and then when they told me that I would never get pregnant again without fertility treatments, which I needed to get pregnant with my first 2 children, I ended up one day when I was 37 feeling like I came down with the flu and not knowing why I didn't feel so well, and found out that I was pregnant with my baby girl, and she's now 9, and she has the propensity of developing PCOS like I do, and my mother and my grandmothers both, I venture to say, have PCOS. So really, she inspired me to do what I do, because I want her to know that PCOS isn't this negative thing that I once thought it was, but rather an opportunity to live life like a diva.
Are there DNA markers that
you're still trying to identify them, but yes, and there's also a thought that there's kind of a male form of PCOS too, and that
I knew it.
Mothers can pass on the insulin resistance and the male pattern baldness and that type of thing onto their sons as well. So, but certainly it doesn't affect men's fertility like it does for women.
Because you went back a few generations and they all had PCOS, so.
Right. So I hope that, the lifestyle choices that I'm trying to teach my daughter to make, eating lots of plant-based food and exercising and, making sure that she takes care of herself, that those genes won't express themselves or, maybe not to the same degree as they did for me.
So you talk about tapping to relieve stress. What the heck is that?
Oh gosh, you've never heard of tapping. So
No.
Oh, I'll
you,
send you
Adrian?
information on tapping.
okay,
No.
yeah, please do, Adrian. It's a great way to
Right.
relieve stress. It's also wonderful for pain management. It would be a great topic to talk about for caregivers because it
Yeah.
can help those that they love
Yeah,
as well
but
as
what
themselves.
is it?
I will send you the information,
Oh,
Dave.
it's kind of personal.
No,
but
it's not
basically you tap on acupressure points. So you tap
Oh.
like on your top of your head, above your eyebrows, right above your cheekbones,
Really?
on your temples, right above your nose, on your chin, your collarbone, and
I'm feeling better.
under your arms. You kind of look like a monkey. And then your karate chop point on your hand.
This works for men
And-
too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, send me
But
that intro.
actually, what's happening is while you're tapping, you're also there's an internal dialogue, and you're talking to yourself, acknowledging whatever the stressor is, and then setting up a what if statement. You know, what if this situation was under my control, or I felt better, or I was, what if I didn't have pain? And it actually turns off the amygdala, kind of that fight or flight response in your brain, and puts you into, more relaxed, parasympathetic kind of state. So there's lots of books written on tapping or the emotional freedom technique, and it's just a really great, low cost, easy way to feel better.
How did I reach the age of 64 and never hear that? That's weird. You also recommend that women with PCOS find creative outlets and make sure to expose themselves to positive and inspiring media. Can you give us some specific examples?
Sure. So I do think that women with PCOS are highly creative, and in my experience now, working with thousands of women through my online programs and coaching, I find that women who are struggling the most with their symptoms are those who have lost touch with their creative side. And, I don't know if there's a metaphysical reason for that, the ovaries are the point of creation and that you need to be creating more to sort of heal that. Or if you're, when you're in sort of that state of creative flow, you're reducing stress. But I do think that there's something to getting in touch with your creativity and expressing that, whether you like to, artistically like draw, or even those adult coloring books can be helpful, or dance, or write, whatever it is that makes you feel alive and, find your bliss and do more of that. I think it's really healing. And I think that social media, while it's a wonderful thing because we have an opportunity to get exposed to podcasts and shows like yours, Dave, and other inspirational content, I do think that it can be another soul-sucking experience in your life when you're scrolling through your feed in the morning, first thing when you wake up, and you start comparing yourself to everybody else that looks like they have it all together. So I do in my book recommend that you really be mindful of the media that you're consuming, and to make room for inspirational podcasts, inspirational books. I love books on tape. I'm reading right now, there's a lot of hype around the book Girl Wash Your Face. Oh gosh, I can't think of her. It's on my phone. I'm listening to it, but it's really inspirational, and it sets me, in a good frame of mind for the day. And I listen to it while I'm folding laundry or cooking dinner or at the grocery store, but just trying to fill my brain with positive thinking, and it really crowding out, the negative stuff. And when you're dealing with a chronic condition, it's kind of easy to fall prey to the woe is me and the negativity.
Yeah,
so I think you need to feed your mind and spirit.
My pastor just did a sermon on that on Sunday. He was talking about the selfies, and how 95 million selfies are taken every single day,
Isn't it
and how we're
ridiculous?
just consumed with us. And he talked about the Greek god Narcissus, whatever his name was, and
Narcissus.
Narcissus, and how Freud coined that term, and so he ended up by saying, which was very profound. He says, never compare your insides with the virtual people that are online with their outsides, because they all look perfect. Their pictures photoshopped and all of this stuff, and you don't know. Like he gave an example that he was golfing in Hawaii, and everyone said, "Oh, how lucky he is." I wish I could go to Hawaii and go golfing, but he's saying, people don't know that I'm going through the worst time with our family that I've ever gone through in my life. And he talked about, he became a prodigal son, and all of that just became very transparent and open. And it's so true. You don't know what people are going through. Doesn't matter what they look on the outside, look like on the outside. So what do you hope to accomplish by establishing this forum that you started? And share some success stories that you had.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, I really want women to be able to move beyond the pain and struggles of PCOS so they can live the life they were meant to live without PCOS holding them back, and to do the work that they're meant to do in this world. And so that's really my goal. And Dave, now I forgot what your other question was.
Success stories.
Success stories. Okay. So, I think that some of my greatest success stories are women who have, like me, struggled with infertility and have tried, everything through, IVF and have had no luck, and they go on my program, and within, 3 to 6 months, they're pregnant and you have a healthy baby. And there's nothing quite like that, that feeling that you've been able to help a woman, achieve that type of dream for herself and her family. And then I think also women with PCOS definitely feel unfeminine, especially with all of the symptoms. They're often kind of gaslighted by their doctors and told that it's all in their head, their symptoms are in their head, or if they just lose some weight and are told that they're not trying hard enough with their diet or exercise, and it leads women to feel like they're not enough and that they're not deserving. They're not deserving of spending the extra time and energy and cost in helping to, give themselves the healthiest life possible. So helping women realize that they are enough and they are deserving and they are worth it. And that is just such a success in my book.
So if you could let the world know one thing about PCOS that you haven't already mentioned, what would it be?
Well, I just want women to know that there is a lot of hope and that they can absolutely feel better with PCOS. They don't have to wait on a magic pill. They are the magic pill, and they just need to start making small steps slowly over time, positive lifestyle choices, and they can absolutely begin the healing process.
Adrienne, did you know about all this stuff, and did you ever have any symptoms like this that could have...
Well, I never tried to get pregnant. I always tried not to get pregnant.
But there are other symptoms.
So I don't know whether or not that I never seemed to have any of these problems. Depression, mood swings, all of that. But that was all just, as far as I was concerned, that was part of being a woman. Hysteria.
Oh, I know what I wanted to ask. Is this what everyone used to call PMS?
No.
That's a good question. No, I mean, women with PCOS can have PMS.
Yeah.
But it is different.
Is it?
Yeah.
So
It
what's
actually
next?
used to be called, back in the 60s and 70s, it was referred to as Stein-Leventhal disorder,
Mm.
Really?
based on the doctors that sort of in modern day discovered the syndrome.
Yeah, you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind to not know that something was going on with your wife.
Well, hormones are very powerful. They can be coming from a lot of different places.
Yeah.
So being able to narrow it down must feel really, really good.
And you know, when I spoke at Harvard, I shared the stage with Caitlyn Jenner, and we
Mhm.
spoke. And he said, you know, at 9 years old, I had this urge to try on all my mother's clothes, and I don't know why this happened to me. And believe me, it's no fun coming out of the closet at 65 years old when you've, reached
Oh, he
stardom and
was
you
out
married
before then.
a
She was out
Kardashian.
before then.
Say again?
She was out before then. Come on.
Just tell me what you said, Adrian.
All you had to
But
do was look.
so, are babies born with some babies with hormonal imbalance? I mean, some babies I understand actually have two genitalia, a male and a female, and the doctor
Yeah.
has to decide, okay, which one do we cut off? And sometimes they make the right decision, and sometimes they don't.
If they don't,
And it's all hormones, isn't it?
Mm. Well, I know that there are increased numbers of women with PCOS population that are, lesbian. There are increased numbers. So whether that elevated testosterone plays into that, I'm not sure.
mm.
And yeah.
So what's next for the PCOS community as the public becomes more and more aware of this syndrome?
Well, there's a lot of exciting things have been happening this month in September. It's PCOS Awareness Month, and we have some really wonderful nonprofits. One is called PCOS Challenge, and the other one is called the PCOS Awareness Association.
Mhm.
And through their efforts, there have been landmarks across the world that have lit up teal, which is the color of PCOS. And also, the PCOS Challenge closed NASDAQ on last Friday. So we're finally
Wow,
making some headway in creating
That's
awareness. And this weekend is our big annual event in Orlando. It's called the PCOS Challenge Symposium, and I'll be speaking there about the empowered PCOS mindset. And hosting a panel on advocating patient advocacy. And then there's a big fundraising walk the next day. So, I think that you can look for, more and more advocacy opportunities. We had a day on Capitol Hill in April where we went to talk to our legislators about increasing funding at the National Institutes of Health for PCOS research and to make PCOS more of a health priority. And we've actually got a resolution that's passed in the Senate, and we're working on that in the House. But we're making some strides.
You're making things happen.
Adrian, why isn't that stuff going on with caregivers? Why aren't we,
Because
opening...
we don't make enough noise.
So how did you guys make all the noise to get all that attention? Because caregivers need to follow in your
We
steps.
have a very small percentage of the number of caregivers that are out there. You know that. I mean,
Well,
if you
a
think
third of
about
the population, that's not a small number.
a third of the
Adrian.
population is a lot, but I'm talking about the number of people that are actually on the site. We're silent. We're a very, very close-mouthed silent group. And I'm trying to do something about that, but it's harder. It's very hard.
Amy, what can you recommend for our problem? Because we need to be doing what you're doing. How did they do that? How did they get that awareness and that publicity? It wasn't always that way, right?
No, it wasn't. It's just been in the last few years that we seem to be making some headway, and I think we're somewhat falling on the coattails of organizations like Resolve, which is an organization for infertility, and they're making some gains, and we're kind of right along with them. But happy to put you in touch with some folks to brainstorm with and see what they're.
Well,
absolutely.
I also want to mention the fact that the financial burden of caregiving on the United States is so enormous. It's just monumental. It's billions and hundreds of billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to just solve it through the Senate or whatever. It's not a health initiative. It's a completely radical rethinking of the healthcare system,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not going to happen so fast. It's going to be a very slow, difficult process.
Hawaii,
Much needed.
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii is the most caregiver-friendly state in the nation. They've passed a Kapuna bill, which is a $1,500 respite to caregivers who are working at least 30 hours a week. I went to the National Hawaii Gerontological Society, and there were politicians and educators from all over the country, and the University of Hawaii, and they're talking about this stuff, but I don't know what it takes to get to the level that you guys are at, because you're tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, it takes some key people, I think, to just keep pushing. And
key politicians.
Yeah, is finding politicians that really believe in your cause, that can advocate for you within Congress is really important. And there's a congressman from the state of Georgia and then there's a doctor from, I think it's the state of Kentucky, and the two of them are really key to the progress that we've made. So I think maybe talking to the legislators from Hawaii and see if they're willing to kind of go to bat for you all.
Yeah, I met a former state senator over there. I met a congressman.
And so that's who you really want to focus on.
So Amy, hook us up with whoever you think. Adrian and I have a passion of trying to make life better for caregivers the way you guys had a passion for making life better for them. Well, I can't believe how fast the hour has gone.
Yes, it has.
Amy, how can someone get a hold of you if they want to learn more or buy your book or just chat? I don't know.
Yeah, so my website is PCOSDiva.com. And
how did I know that?
And I'm available on pretty much all the social media platforms at PCOS Diva. And if you want to email me, feel free to send me an email, amy@PCOSDiva.com, and I'd be happy to connect.
That's Diva, D-I-V-A.
Right.
Adrian, how do we get a hold of you if someone wants to know more about the caregiver space?
Adrienne, ADRIENNE, at thecaregiverspace.org. And thecaregiverspace.org is also the website with links to all the social media pages you could imagine.
And I'm caregiverdave.com, and it's just simple because I'm a caregiver and I'm Dave. You'll never forget that website, I hope. So have a wonderful weekend, and goodbye. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you for listening to the Caregivers Caregiver radio program with Dave Nasani.